Alright YouTube, so we're back of course to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and this is a video that's been on the back burner for quite some time. I told somebody I was going to make this a long time ago, finally here making it. You guys already know, I've talked about the Dyne scene to death on this channel. I've said it before, say it again, it's my personal favorite segment of the entire Final Fantasy VII story, which I don't know how maybe controversial that is. There's definitely more iconic scenes in a lot of ways. But something about that segment has always stuck with me throughout my life. No matter, in the early days of playing FF7 the first couple of times, you don't remember everything about the game, right? But the Dyne segment is definitely one of those moments that I never forgot after my first playthrough. And when it comes to this video, the title and subject matter is involving Dyne. It's not just about that segment. It's kind of really all of the Mount Corel Desert Prison segment, because you get a lot of backstory on the character of Barret. Pretty much all the members of the main party get a segment in the game where you get some character development, you get some backstory on those characters, and this is the segment for Barret. This is where you learn his motivation for why he's so adamant on taking down Shinra. Essentially, sort of the TLDR on the backstory of Corel and stuff like that is the original town of Corel was a coal mining town that became impoverished because of the global use of Mako, which is just a more popular and better energy source in a lot of ways. Barret and pretty much the entire town of Corel, except for Dyne, were fine with Shinra coming in and putting in a Mako reactor in the area, which should improve the economy of the town. Eventually, Barret does convince Dyne, but then inevitably, there's a fight between Avalanche and Shinra at the reactor. Obviously, this is early days before Barret's actually a part of Avalanche. But because of that, Shinra completely destroys the town of Corel, and the survivors blame Barret, which I understand why he would blame himself, feel responsible and stuff like that, but again, the entire town was on board with the Shinra putting in the reactor. This is also the part of the game where we learn what happened with Barret, why he has the gun arm, what happened there, but also where Marlene came from. Because it goes without saying, but you gotta mention it, he's clearly not her biological father. And I remember playing this, even back then, when I was a kid, really, really young, that stood out, right? It's pretty obvious. He's a black guy, she's a white little girl. There has to be some sort of story behind that, and the devs did not disappoint. In a lot of ways, I think this might be my favorite, character backstory. I think it's really interesting. Because you don't really need to give a backstory for why Barret hates Shinra so much. They're killing the planet. That's enough motivation in of itself, but they actually give you a legitimate reason. We also get to see how truly great of a person Barret is, because he's willing to take on the responsibility of raising the daughter of what he thinks is his dead friend. Which is something he didn't have to do, right? He could have just got Marlene to safety and then found her a place to live. Within the remake story, for example, we have the Leaf House in Sector 5, an orphanage that he could have taken her to, but he took on the responsibility of raising her himself. Maybe it's guilt, maybe he felt responsible for Dyne's death, maybe he felt responsible for the destruction of Corel, but for whatever reason, he's willing to do it. One scene that really shows the burden and guilt that Barret carries is once we get to the town of North Corel, this random guy walks up to Barret and just instantly punches him in the face without saying a word. And the Barret that we know wouldn't allow that, right? The Barret that we're used to at this point would 100% with anybody else, punch them back, maybe even shoot them, who knows, yell at them, whatever the case, right? But he just stands there and takes it because of how guilty he feels. Anyways, once we get to the Gold Saucer, Barret's pissed off because of what happened in North Corel. Everybody goes their separate ways. And then eventually we stumble upon the battle square and everybody there being killed. There is one survivor who says that it was a man with a gun arm. And sort of rightfully so, our group suspects Barret just because they don't have any context. They don't know that there's anybody else out in the world that maybe has a gun arm. All we know is Barret. And I don't even remember if back in the day as a kid if I thought Barret would do that. Now as an adult, I think it makes no sense at all, right? We know that Barret wouldn't do that. That's not the kind of person that he is. And this all taking place before Barret actually gives his full backstory to the party, so they don't even know about Dyne. So again, rightfully so, they kind of suspect him. But Barret does know that Dyne is still alive. We find that out whenever we're actually in the desert prison, whenever he got his prosthetic arm and gun and stuff like that from Old Man Sakaki. He also talks about how he did the same operation for a different guy. But it was for that guy's left arm, which led Barret to believe that it is in fact Dyne. So he's known for several years at this point that Dyne is alive. But it's even past this, past Dyne killing a bunch of innocent people within the Gold Saucer, where the story takes an even darker turn once Dyne and Barret finally meet up after all these years. Because Dyne learns that Marlene is alive. He thought his wife Eleanor was dead. He thought, Corel's gone, which it is gone. And he thought Marlene was dead this whole entire time for the last couple of years. And he finds out from Barret that Marlene is in fact still alive. And for that reason, Dyne wants to fight Barret. And he wants to take Marlene to see her mother. As in, he wants to kill his own daughter. So clearly Dyne's pretty messed up in the head after the last couple of years. As far as he knows, everybody is dead, right? Eleanor, Barret, Marlene, everybody from Corel, whatever the case. So he's been wanting to take revenge on the world, as he says. To the point now where he seems to be crazy, right? Because obviously if he's in his right mind, he wouldn't want to kill his own daughter. And then you get the solo fight between Barret and Dyne, which is super interesting because you don't get a lot of these in the original FF7. And off the top of my head, I think you only get Cloud and Rufus and Barret and Dyne. Maybe there's another one out there I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head. And this fight goes on further to show the importance of this moment for the character of Barret, where he doesn't want help from the party. He doesn't want help from Cloud and whoever else you brought with you. It has to be a solo, one-on-one fight. And he's got to, put his old friend down because he's kind of out of his mind. And it's a pretty sad moment when you think about it, because while Dyne is completely wrong in the things that he's done recently and the things that he just said, we know it's not entirely his fault because he's kind of out of his mind. He's a broken man these days. He spent years hating Shinra, hating Barret, finally meets up with Barret, finds out that his daughter is in fact alive, and the guy that he's been hating for all these years has been raising her. That's of course not trying to justify what's happening right now, but from Dyne's perspective, you can kind of understand what's going on, even if he is completely wrong. And somehow they found a way to make it even darker and sadder, because after the fight, after Barret kicks Dyne's ass, he's thinking a little bit more clearly, right? And he realizes there'd be no point in going back to Marlene. She was so young whenever Corel got destroyed. She was just a couple months, maybe like half a year old whenever Corel was destroyed. She wouldn't even know who he is. She wouldn't even recognize him. And plus, he feels like his hands are too stained with blood these days, right? He's done too much bad shit. And then to even give you one last punch to your goddamn fills, Dyne tosses Barret Eleanor's pendant to give to Marlene as a memento, and then he kills himself. I've said it before a few times, but this part of the FF7 story is kind of the measuring stick for me when it comes to Remake, partially because it is my favorite segment, but also because of how dark and serious this moment is. It has me pretty curious and a little bit worried how they're going to handle this moment when it comes to the Remake story, simply because we didn't see that much mature content when it came to the first Remake game, right? For starters, would they show a room full of dead bodies that Dyne killed? Because we didn't really see any dead bodies at all in the Remake story. Secondly, would they actually have Dyne talking about wanting to kill Marlene so that she can be with Eleanor? I don't know if they'd go that far. And thirdly, would they even have the balls to show Dyne killing himself? Don't get me wrong, episode intermission was a step in the right direction. We do see Sonon getting stabbed multiple times. We see some blood coming out of his mouth, blood splattered on Yuffie's face. So maybe they're kind of headed in that direction. That's something we talked about a little bit here and there. And maybe that's somewhat the point of this section of episode intermission, is to let us know that shit's going to get more serious going forward. It's going to be a lot darker, and I hope that is the case. Because if you're going to try to replicate the Dyne scene from the original Final Fantasy VII within Remake, you can't hold back, dude. You have to just go for it. You have to go for it all. And something else that somewhat worries me when it comes to the Remake story is the fact that we kill the plot ghost at the end of the game, right? We killed the Whisperers. So they kind of have that get out of jail free card, like we don't have to do things the same. Dyne doesn't have to die. You know, we could do something else. Which isn't the worst thing ever. Hear me out, my dudes. I spent the better part of this video defending the Dyne segment and wanted it to be pretty much the exact same from the original Final Fantasy VII, and I completely stand by that. But there is something to be said if we could get a Dyne and Marlene moment in Remake. I mean, think about it, man. For 25 plus years now, FF7's been out. We've been watching Dyne go through that heartbreaking moment, killing himself at the end of the segment. Imagine if there's a way to do it differently. I've kind of always wanted that. As I've been playing FF7 through most of my life, every time I get to that moment, again, it's my favorite moment, but I've always wished that there was a different way. Like, maybe Barret could talk Dyne out of doing that, out of killing himself. Maybe I just want you to listen to Barret, Dyne. Come back to Midgar with him. Come back and see your daughter. And with Remake, that is a possibility. I'm not saying that I want Dyne to insert himself into Marlene's life and try to be her father. She doesn't even have to know that he's her biological father, right? It doesn't matter what he says, because Barret's her dad. He's the one that's been raising her for 4+ years or so now. She doesn't even have to know who he actually is, right? He could just simply say, I'm a friend of your dad's. But if we could get that conversation between Dyne and Marlene, he gets to see his daughter, one last time potentially, the last piece of Eleanor that he has, man, that would hit hard. Again, I'm not necessarily advocating for that, I'm just talking about the possibility. Similar to how we talk about Zack and Aerith meeting up, assuming that Zack is alive, of course, and in our world, in our timeline, whatever the case, the possibility of them seeing each other again after all these years, that's going to hit pretty hard, right? But imagine if Dyne actually got to see his daughter for once, instead of just fucking dying. I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about it, because I'm so much of a fan of that segment. As depressing and dark and sad as it is to watch Dyne and Barret fight each other and him kill himself and not think he's worthy of his daughter's affection or love, can't even hold his daughter anymore. Like, that stuff hurts. It hurts, and it's going to hurt in Remake if it happens. And that right there is the beauty of Final Fantasy VII Remake, because it has me questioning my favorite scene from the original game. The scene that I think, for me, is the most sacred, right? The scene that I don't want them to alter in the goddamn slightest. I'm almost, in my mind right now, convincing myself that I want it to be different. That means something. That says something to me. The thing is, they've given me no reason to doubt them so far when it comes to the Remake story. I know some people have their gripes with what's going on, but I've enjoyed everything so far. And I think they're going to handle at least the Corel and Barret backstory stuff perfectly. It's going to be probably almost exactly the same as it was in FF7. It's the Dyne stuff that I'm not entirely sure about. And as I'm thinking about it right now and recording, I don't know how I feel entirely. I get if people have a purist perspective, because I had that before. I still have that in some ways. But I'm not 100% on what I want them to do with the segment as of right now. It's conflicting, dude. I don't entirely know. I'm at least a majority sure that I want it to be the original FF7 Dyne segment. But if they do it the right way, differently, it could be good, man. Maybe even great. But regardless of what they choose to do when it comes to the Remake story, it has to be perfect. It either has to be the original FF7, or there has to be a Dyne Marlene meetup at some point. Because it can't just be Barret and Dyne fight, and then Barret like talks him out of like killing himself or whatever the case, and he just like walks off in the distance, never to be seen again. Like, no, I need a goddamn conclusion. You can't just be ambiguous. You can't not have the balls to like kill him, but also not have the balls to have him and Marlene meet up. Like, you gotta give me something there. There's no in between. It's one or the other. Here's the main thing with this, my dudes. Dyne doesn't necessarily have to die. You could argue that it's another death on Barret's conscience. It's another burden to carry. It's motivation for him to succeed in what he's doing, whether that's taking down Shinra, taking down Sephiroth, and you wouldn't be wrong there. But the way I've always kind of looked at it, and especially now with the remake story and the possibility of things being different, is that the one thing that can maybe pull Dyne back from like the mental hole that he's in these days and the evil that he's done is the revelation that his daughter is alive. But of course, those are just my thoughts on this, my dudes. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm nervous a little bit. I'm excited a little bit. It's going to be very, very interesting. Once we, as soon as we get to like Mount Corel, once we leave like Costa del Sol, hopefully this all is happening in the next game, by the way. I haven't really touched on that in this video. Hopefully that's happening in part 2. But once we like leave Costa del Sol and we start heading towards Mount Corel, that's when the hands are going to start sweating. Because I'm starting to get a little nervous here. We're headed towards the backstory of Barret, which means we're headed towards Dyne, which means we're headed towards some feels potentially. All I know is once that stuff starts happening, once we start getting the backstory of Corel and backstory of Barret Wallace, I'm going to be focusing on every little thing. Because for me, it's all got to be perfect. Also, I've failed to mention this throughout the entire video as well. Once we get the backstory of Corel and stuff with Remake, like, I hope we get to actually see Eleanor, but also get to see Barret's wife. Like, that's such like a brushed over moment in the original FF7. He talks about how he used to have a wife in Corel, but it's like, you think that'd be a bigger thing that he lost her? And I'm surprised they didn't actually drop like a little Easter egg or mention of it with Remake. You think they'd kind of start setting the groundwork for that? Because you think him losing a wife would be a pretty big deal, but he doesn't really talk about it. But of course, I'm going to pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts on this? Because I know we've talked about this before on the channel. There's plenty of other Dyne fans out there, plenty of other people that are fans of this segment. Is it sacred to you as well? Does it have to be the exact same more or less when it comes to Remake? Are you fine with them changing it? If they do change it, what would you like to see? Also, with a video like this, it's obviously longer than our normal videos, and it takes a lot more effort, my dudes. I've been recording for the better part of like 5 or 6 hours at this point. Trying to make sure that my thoughts are clear, trying to say exactly how I feel about shit, trying to make sure that I get my points across. So I appreciate any traction to these kinds of videos, man. The ones that take a little more effort than our usual videos. The likes, the comments, the subs, the shares if people share my videos. I have no idea if anybody does. But my dudes, that is going to be the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't even said more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter, #DavidYT, and my Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description. And an outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.